I heard he can be used to help in any kind of way. So to me, he's scary. You heard about the McCormicks? What about them? Before they bought real estate out here, they lived on their farm up the way. Well, some poachers thought it would be a good idea to steal their cattle and crops. Cammy, who was Marsha's great aunt, overheard her brothers plotting to ambush the bandits. But little did they know, they were connected to the town sheriff of that time. Cammy knew this because she was sleeping with one of the crooks. She wasn't behind the theft. In fact, she only began to piece it together when hearing her brothers describe her lover after they sighted him during another burglary attempt. She asked him about his whereabouts during that night and he got all jittery and dismissive. She got scared because she knew her brothers were going to kill him, but might not be justified because of the corrupt sheriff that was behind it. Him and some town officials were conspiring on getting the land from her family. Then what happened? Jamila asked. Early on in the next day, Cammy placed her right hand on the mirror and said the chant to call Mose off. Jamila's mouth opened wide at her friend Janice's remark. To her, the McCormicks were the average wholesome pillar of the community family. But now that Janice mentioned it, Marsha's great aunt Cammy, who was still alive, sat on the porch from time to time and would say nothing. But the family knew exactly what she wanted with a head nod and a point, and would respond swiftly. No fucking way. It's true, Janice responded. She's not the first caller of Mozov, but it said that she found the McCormick Book of Spells under a floorboard of the barn. Alright, so what happened next? Jamila slid her book bag from her shoulder as if she wanted to stay in the cafe with Janice a little longer than she initially intended. Janice continued the story. A few days later, the poachers got together to go to the McCormick's farm again. This time with the truck full of some poison disguised as pesticides or some shit like that. Cammy's brothers were laying in the bushes waiting with shotguns and chased them down to the edge of the property, where the sheriff had actually been responding to a domestic dispute at the neighbors across the street. Oh hell no, said Jamila. I know, right? But listen, Cammy's man and them slowed down because of the police presence, and you know, they were tied in with the sheriff. But instead of Cammy's brothers stopping, they started shooting because they were in the right being the intruders were on their private property. Robbie McCormick shot Cammy's man's leg clear off. He bled out and died on the spot. The rest of them put their hands up and cozied up next to the sheriff, who was disrupted by the gunshot when handcuffing the man abusing his wife. As the sheriff got startled, the abusive husband slipped out of the sheriff's grasp and began choking him. What? Jamila said, eyes wide open and intrigued. Right, Janice continued. The sheriff struggled to grab his gun because of how great the submission hold was on him, so he crackled at the remaining poachers to help him. What are you doing? Don't just stand there, grab him! Robbie McCormick stood confused due to the bold display of confidence between the sheriff and the crooks, but also thought maybe it was just a cry for help out of desperation. Robbie's little brother, however, wasn't fooled at all. Why wouldn't the sheriff ask the McCormicks for help, being they were a staple in the community, and were rightfully there and armed? Because the sheriff didn't like them, he wanted their land, Jamila interrupted. That's true, Janice responded. But the sheriff was cunning, and gave no indication that he despised the McCormicks at any time. In fact, he would occasionally stop by to chat with them while picking up some eggs and milk. They had a very cordial relationship. Robbie's little brother Michael grew angered at the plot unraveling before him and kept his shotgun aimed on the assailant closest to the sheriff, who out of loyalty reached for the sheriff's revolver. Michael fired on instinct. The shot was too close range for the robber to survive it. The main blast burst through his heart and a buckshot ripped through his face, making him unrecognizable. Robbie yelled at his brother in shock. Mikey, what are you doing? He said, I know what I'm doing, brother. It's a setup. He then emptied the shells from the double barrel and loaded that motherfucker right back up and aimed at the two remaining robbers who took off down the road nonstop. They got up out of there. Now, dude choking out the sheriff was like 6'4", big motherfucker. So he was lifting the sheriff off his feet, choking the life out of him. Mikey stepped in front of his brothers to prevent them from firing a shot, and they watched as the last breaths left the sheriff's limp body. The giant of a man who was now a killer snapped out of his state of shock and reached for the pistol from the sheriff's corpse. But before he could fully grasp it, the point of a butcher knife split the spleen area of his torso. His wife, brutally beaten with visible scars all over her body, commenced stabbing her husband 38 times, then spit on him as he lay on top of the sheriff dead. She was distraught and wouldn't let go of the knife. Her chest heaved as she looked at the McCormick's brothers without blinking. Robbie lowered his shotgun and signaled for the rest of his brothers to do the same. Then he slowly walked to the sheriff's cruiser for the CB and called in Officer Down. What the fuck? Jamila gasped. And so what? How does Mozov play a part in it all? All of that could have been a case of random chance. Moreover, isn't that fucked up for Cammy? She lost her lover anyway. And what about the McCormicks? Were they justified for the shooting?